All right, our presenter today is Mr. Rob MacDonald. He is the current president of the Evergreen District of the Barbershop Harmony Society. Rob has been a barbershopper since 1977 and has held nearly every chapter position, including chapter president. He is an MC. He sings with Western Hospitality Singers and the Quartet Timelines when he has a voice. His company specializes in leadership and team development, and he has brought this expertise to various leadership academies around the society, in addition to serving on the leadership facilitator team, helping chapters reach their individual goals. Rob, we thank you for joining us. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Scott, and good morning, gentlemen. And thanks for being guinea pigs on this inaugural try at kind of an online session like this. So much appreciated. I wanted to just, I'm going to see if I can still share my screen and show you what I'm up to in terms of our agenda today. And it's a bit of an overview. I mean, it's if any of you have been to the old COTS sessions, it's a little bit tough to get through all that stuff in a day, let alone an hour. But I wanted to give you a high-level overview just because I think there's some touch points that all of us should just sort of recognize as we're getting into leadership and presidential roles this year in 2018. So I'm going to kind of follow this agenda. Hopefully there's a few nuggets in here for you. And there's some things that you can maybe grab onto and use tomorrow. My goal is not to just wax philosophic about a bunch of stuff, but also give you some tools that can make you more effective in some of the things that you're doing as you're leading in your chapter. So I guess the first thing I'd like to say, and maybe this is a bit of a philosophical point, is I truly believe that one of the reasons presidents exist in chapters is obviously to keep the operation running. But also, I guess underlining all that is enable the singing. Whatever you do, I hope the question you're asking behind the scenes is this actually helping us all sing together? Is this growing the group? Is this doing something to enhance our performance? What am I doing, or what are my committees doing so that I can actually help the singing go forward? And I recognize that most of us wear a different hat. You're a president at one level, obviously at the board level and that kind of thing. But then when you're on the risers, you're a riser singer. And so that's a different hat, and there's different ways to lead from that perspective too. But the basic thing, and probably the reason why I say this enable the singing, is because unfortunately I've run into a few chapters where presidents and music leaders kind of get cross-threaded and maybe get a little disjointed and a little out of sorts because they haven't really, one has to serve the other. And I would submit to you that the reason we all exist as chapters is to sing, and so that's your number one role, if there is one. Clearly, in terms of keep the operation running, you can see that I do believe in monthly board meetings. I believe in checking in on a fairly regular basis to see what everybody's doing. I believe in keeping preparing an agenda and making sure that happens the way it is, and then keeping minutes, and those minutes to keep people accountable for some of the actions they went forward with as a result of that meeting. So I think it's a big deal to have that somewhat formalized, again, to keep the operation running. Overseeing the financial health, I think it's best when chapters have a budget, when they know what they're going to do with it, when they know what the next year looks like, when they know what their primary revenue source is. I've been in a chapter for quite a few years, and our primary revenue source was our show revenue. And so how we styled our shows, how we sold our tickets, how we did things to get more audience members and bums in seats was kind of a key deal to making revenue. And I recognize there's all sorts of other revenue sources out there, singing Valentines. We have one group in Evergreen that works the Oregon track meets, and they provide all the food for the track meets, and so that's their big revenue source. Not exactly lining up with the singing side, but at least they can make the revenue. So do you know where your revenue is coming from? And do you know what expenditures are required this year? Replacing risers, replacing uniforms, all those kinds of things. Sponsoring guys to go to the contests or go to the conventions. Those are all places where you have to have your foot or your finger on the financial health of what's going on. Obviously, overseeing the legal stuff. As nonprofits and as charities, we are obligated to do annual filings, and in some cases even have our books audited. And so clearly part of your role is to make sure that the legal stuff is taken care of, and that's getting things done. And so the legal stuff just has to get done. And it's unfortunately what has happened is that there has been some chapters who've fallen out of favor on that thing. In some cases even lost their nonprofit status. And believe me, IRS and losing nonprofit status is not a fun place to be. So that's part of your role to kind of keep that moving. And then also, it's all of us have different teams that are helping things go, whether it's the what happens on rehearsal nights, how the membership growth is happening, how you're deciding to do some of those kind of things, getting some of that day-to-day stuff done, moving the checks through the accounting system. I mean, all those kinds of things. Basically, it's your role to make sure you've got all those places in place, or all those people in place to do those kinds of things. And hopefully you've got some backup. We all have experienced a horrible burnout in some of our chapters where one guy or three guys are actually doing it all. And so I believe that part of that role of a president is to find out, okay, who's the next guy. You know, when you get new members in the door, boy, those guys are enthusiastic, and without overwhelming them too much, they can be exactly the kind of experts you may need, and certainly matching the enthusiasm of joining you for the first time. They don't have that kind of jaundiced view of what happens after 20 or 30 years. And it's kind of nice to have those guys on board, and maybe even in some of those support teams to help you move forward. And we're going to get to just how you can get those guys on board pretty quickly by delegating well. So we'll be talking about that. The big four, I guess I call it, the compliance thing. You've probably all experienced maybe a letter from the district or from the society regarding compliance. And of course, because we are all under this nonprofit umbrella that our society has set up for us, it means they speak on our behalf that we are all in compliance with that nonprofit status. And so the quick four that you have to have a pretty good grounding on is recognizing that you need these things to actually operate as a compliant nonprofit chapter. So part of your role, I believe, as a president, is to make sure you're doing that. You have to have at least 8 dues-paying members. You have to have your incorporation filings up to date, which we talked a little bit about already. The tax filings have to be up to date with whatever is required there. I realize different states, I'm from Canada, so we have different requirements as well. Whatever that is, but making sure that that is up to date. And then, of course, obviously that you've paid the insurance to BHS for coverage of what we get on kind of a weekly basis as we rehearse. There's a couple other things that have popped up, and you're probably aware of this as well, and that is other insurance requirements. For example, if you're going to sponsor a youth event or have other entertainers on your show, there's some other insurance requirements that you should probably check into just to make sure you've got that right. And the other kind of burning one that comes out of some of this is perma guests. How many of you have got people that keep on showing up on a pretty regular basis, but they haven't quite made the commitment to your course, or maybe they haven't made the commitment if you have an audition program, and they kind of keep on coming back? There's a limit to how far we can actually protect those folks in terms of insurance. And it's kind of alarming if you dig into just how many rehearsals they would actually be insured for without becoming some kind of a member in the society. Check into that to make sure that that's about it, or that that's a real deal. We have that example in our chorus right now. We held a Christmas chorus, and we invited men to come and sing some Christmas songs with us on our show. Turned out to be a benefit show, which was great. Got about 10, 12 guys to sing with us on our show. And so that took about 5-6 weeks to get them all up to speed on those songs. And then after the show, they are now, probably half of them are very interested in joining our chorus, and we now have them in kind of the audition track to get going. But it's probably going to be 6 months of them involved with us before we can finally sign them up as members. And some of them, unfortunately, are probably going to pass by the wayside. So some of the perma-guest issue kind of comes to bear, and you have to be pretty cognizant of how that really actually works in your course. And don't allow guys to be hanging around for months and months and months without becoming a member your session or your course or your chapter, even in a non-singing capacity. It's just a way of them having all the advantages of being part of your chapter without committing to anything. So that's part of the issue around perma guests, and I think we all struggle with this a little bit. And I'd suggest that it's your role to make sure you know where those guys are and what they're doing. Okay, so we've passed through a couple things. There's a program out there that was created by Steve Wojcicki, and he called it "They Made Me President, Now What?" And actually, I'm going to pull that up. I can see if I can pull up a chunk of this for you. This is a session that he's done in GAD for a while. I'm just going to see if I can get this up here in a bigger way. Yeah, here we go. So I just wanted to, he talks about some things, and I think we've covered off some of those. So he did talk about, you know what, we are really all in this together, and with your board, this is not a benevolent dictatorship. Although it's sometimes like that from the music side. You know, when you're president of a chapter, it's really not a dictatorship. It really should be more of an equal moving forward and helping people get in all of this together. And so I hope you can see this. Scott, please cut in if you can't. And so I just wanted to review to make sure that you kind of recognize that there are some things that the secretary does. As you can see, you've got the corporate status. We've talked about the membership, including that youth protection policies, elections of reporting officers, the agenda, the minute preparations, making sure the ASCAP, BMI licenses are filed and paid, copyright licenses. You've probably known the days of photocopied music or personal arrangements of music without getting permission is gone. We all need to be singing from legal versions, and especially if we're going to be singing on our shows and in competitions. So making sure that that's all legal is good. Ordering supplies, making sure that we know what's going on in terms of our calendar and those kind of things. And then treasurers, keep the chapter off suspension. We have to pay the society statements, work for renewals, and of course that's part of the membership renewals. Financial reviews. One of the biggest thing that happened when we learned about this compliance issue from the society is frankly, the treasurer or the secretary were not keeping the e-biz filing notification up to date. And that's the same thing on Member Center, where we need the treasurer and the secretary to actually say, yes, we have filed, yes, we are legal, that kind of thing. And even that lack of notification can call into question some of the compliance issues. And so that's an important piece to make sure the society knows that we have complied. Clearly, there's other stuff around the banks and the budgeting process, and then some of the other incorporation, liability, insurance, and that kind of stuff. And so I think there's the way I look at it is that the treasurer and the and the secretary and the president are the triumvirate of any chapter. And if you've been paying attention to some of the society stuff that's come out, they've also talked about this is really the only 3 essential officers that you need in your chapter. And I recognize in our chapters, there's probably as many as 40. I think if I've counted them, there could be as many as 40 different appointed positions, be it VP of program or music and performance and all those other things. The fact is you really only need 3 to keep your chapter going. And so that's what is so important, to make sure that this team is doing what you need to do to kind of keep it operating, keep it legal, keep it compliant. The other roles that you need in your chapter really would depend on the size of your chapter and what you're really aiming to do. And I recognize that there are some grandfathered roles in there that really just have, excuse me, I seem to have a thing going on here. Anyway, there are some roles that may have been grandfathered in that perhaps aren't as useful anymore, or perhaps aren't aiming you in the right direction. And I would submit to you that part of your role as a president is to make sure that whatever your plan is going forward for this year, that you have whatever those roles are that you need. I mean, I recognize there's some primary ones like membership. There's probably going to be a show or something kind of performance guy that you need in that kind of role. But making sure that you have that rather than filling in all the blanks of all the other characters that have traditionally come to our chapters. The fact of the matter is that these three roles, treasurer, president, secretary, are all you really need. And after that, it's kind of bonus. And moving around those roles to sort of shape where you want to do, what you want to do that year, and how you want to move forward is I think, a real key to your success. So it doesn't become kind of the traditional, I'm just going to do this because this is kind of what fits with me. The other thing to notice is a couple other things that the society has allowed us to do, and one is to allow outside board members. If you don't have particular expertise in your chapter, you may, for example, get a marketing person from your community and say, would you join our board and would you be part of that? The society allowed for a couple of outside board members that may have some expertise that can assist you. And that would be something that could really help you get to where you really want to get to. On that marketing example, what I learned in my chapter was we had some great marketing guys, but the last thing they wanted to do was make marketing part of their hobby as well as their job. And so we never quite had the same kind of expertise we needed at the time. Now, please excuse me for a moment. I'm going to just close this door. Okay, my apologies for that. The other thing that could be useful to you as well is recognizing that we are, because we are relatively small boards, we can use the Roberts rules for small boards to be a little bit more effective. And so you'll notice if you've kind of looked those up, and there are versions of all this on the Society webpage, bringing motions to the board, how you vote, what the chair of the board is allowed to vote on, and those kind of things. Those are all rules that could actually speed up some of your board meetings and make them just a little bit more slick in terms of how you operate. So I guess the real key is you don't need, I've also run into chapters in terms of their boards. For example, I call on a 16-person chapter in Evergreen, and when I went to their board meeting, 13 people were at the board meeting. And so you can imagine that what you had is basically it was a group, grassroots, everybody had to be involved right from the grassroots in every board meeting. And I suggested to them that probably going with a smaller executive team to kind of guide some of these things would be better rather than having to rehash everything. Now, as wonderful as it is to get consensus by everybody, there were still 3 other guys that had to be informed about things. But it seems like that was a pretty onerous way to hold a board meeting when frankly, they weren't doing as much other than just getting together. It was just sort of another social gathering almost. So that is, I guess, a question about how does your board actually operate? What roles do you actually need in yours? And don't be afraid to name them something different to fit what you actually need in your chapter. Of course, some districts, for example, have a vice president of fun. And that's a big deal. So, maybe you need a person like that in your chapter. Maybe you have a spark plug like that, and you can use them in a better way. So there are some opportunities in terms of how you shape your board, who's on it, who can be on it, how big it has to be. And if you find that some of this is getting a little onerous, then streamline it to fit your chapter and fit you, because that's kind of a key. All right. I'm moving on. I'm past this. I'm now going to talk about vision, and I'm probably going to guess that a lot of you would say, "Oh, damn, I hate talking about things like this." You know what? This thing called vision, whether you want to call it a practice or whether you want to call it a purpose or a mission or a big picture, there's some pretty big things in terms of gee, how do I kind of make this work? And I would suggest, I'm taking this from some of the leadership curriculum that have been created by the Society. And it really is important that you understand as a president where you want to go this year. The vision, if I was to kind of define it, I would say it speaks to your heart. It speaks to the emotional buy-in. And as you probably, most of you know, we are part head and part heart. The head stuff kind of makes sense to us, and that's what we kind of follow through on. But it's the real emotional buy-in. When we use phrases like barbershop changed my life, that's more than just head talking. That's heart talking. And I think the question you have to ask yourself as a president is, for the next year, what's going to change lives of the people that we sing for, or what's going to change the lives of the people that are in our chapter right now? What's going to move us forward in a way that people want to be part of us? And I think that has to be a real key to our success is, do you have an emotional buy-in in terms of how you want to go forward? And of course, what we're suggesting here is this: leaders have a driving passion to realize their vision. I'm actually not kidding on this one. This is kind of a big deal. If you, as president of your chapter, have a real idea of what you want to do this year and how you can put it into places where it gets you in your gut and it moves your heart, I'll tell you, you're on the right track. I don't think any of us as presidents want to just do the same thing or wind up exactly where we were a year from now. Some of our chapters are so calendar driven, with the spring show, or maybe you have a competition, or maybe you have something to do in the summer, and then maybe you do a Christmas thing or a fall thing. And between those 3, 4, 5 events, that defines your year. And then you get back to the end of the year, and by golly, it's all the same all over again. If you find yourself in that rut, it is time to sort of say, we need to move out of this. We need to get to a place where we're doing something bigger, where we're doing something more, where we're impacting people in different ways, where we're impacting our own members in different ways. And that's where the vision idea comes in. I probably can't overstate this one. For example, obviously the society has come up with a new strategic vision they call Everyone in Harmony. And I had a little speech at the House of Delegates meeting that we had in Evergreen last fall. And I remember when I first heard about this, I sent an email to Marty Monson and I said, Everyone in Harmony, what possibly are you talking about? I mean, is this world peace? I mean, what are you talking about? And he responded back, and I kind of got it. But the fact of the matter is, if you embrace a vision like Everyone in Harmony, what could it mean to your chapter? In my chapter, it could mean we're going to stop arguing at a board level over the minors. We're going to quit majoring on the minor junk. We're going to get to a bigger picture in terms of who we can be as a chapter. And so we're going to get more harmonious in terms of the way we deal with each other inside the chapter. That to me would be a piece of Everyone in Harmony. And then also it's going to be, okay, well, who's everyone outside of our chapter? Well, the arts community, the other communities we deal with, the high school youth, other arts foundations that are out there. What is our bigger picture in terms of our community outreach? And in my chapter, that's become a really big deal. It's become how can we put more effort into not just pleasing ourselves within our chapter, but getting other people involved in harmony. One of the things that we're doing, we're hosting, we have a division contest convention this year, and we are the hosts, and we are inviting a cappella groups to come and join us on the contest stage and get judged by our judges and get evaluated and coached. And we think that's one way of kind of embracing the Everyone in Harmony, introducing them to barbershop. It's the old story of you sing a cappella, we sing a cappella, let's sing a cappella together. So we're sincerely hoping that they'll also learn Keep the Whole World Singing, and that will be our big finale on our Saturday night show. Bottom line of all this is, do you have a vision for your chapter? Do you have a place where you want to move to that's different from where you started the year at? And what's it going to look like? And how does it grab the heart? Now, without being able to translate that into reality, which is what this practice number 1 suggests, is it's one thing to dream it, it's another thing to actually put it into reality. And it's going to take some discussion. It might take some budget. It might take some time. It may take some people that aren't used to doing some things that they'd be doing. But the fact of the matter is the stuff that we buy into as a chapter is the stuff that gets moved. That's what changes our chapter. That's what allows us to kind of grow up and be who we really want to be. And so that's, so I'm just trying to get out of here. So I think this is a kind of a big deal, that your vision gets that emotional buy-in, has some heart, and it's going to get your chapter to a different place than where it started at the start of 2018. Do you have something like that going on, or are you basically just trying to survive getting through your calendar like every other year? And so that is something that I'd like to just throw at you. All right, I'm trying to get out of here. Let me see if I can. Can't get out of there. Okay, apologies, gentlemen. I can't seem to get in there. Let's pull up. Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Okay. So part of the other suggestion I have here is, okay, so what's going to make this vision real? And planning for the next couple years. And moving forward, what are the events you're gonna zero in on? Are there going to be some extra ones? Singing in the mall on barbershop harmony or barbershop quartet day, great idea. How do you follow that up? What are some of the other things you can be doing? Those are all things that you can sort of market around. And I'm not suggesting that you actually go out and do things. You do things that are sort of double-edged. If you're going to go sing in a mall, make it a great performance in your mall. And if people get interested in you, they know how to get hold of you. Don't make everything a membership thing, because sometimes you can be kind of bending it a little too far. Unfortunately, we had one chapter in our district that the only reason they wanted to do youth and harmony workshops was to recruit members. And the unfortunate thing is when music educators know that you're after their students, they don't like you nearly as much. And so sometimes you have to kind of make sure you understand how you're trying to reach out to your community and do things. So plan for the next 1 to 2 years. Chances are you're going to be in that position for a bit. What are the events you want to zero in on? What are the budgets you want to do? What are some of the changes you want to make to some of those events that you're doing, and what do you want to try? And I know that there are probably 1,000 different ways to perform in public. What are some things that really matter to you, and what's gonna really do it for you? Set some goals. Set some what we call SMART goals for the next 3 to 6 months. It's impossible, I find, if you're only in it as president for a year, to kind of make it one goal or make it 2 goals that stretch the year. You want to get some short-term goals and achieve some things that are kind of that can actually move the dial along your vision track in your chapter, and you get some recognition of what happened in the first 3 or 6 months. So people say, oh, okay, I get it. This is what you're aiming for. Here's what we're trying to do. This is what makes sense to us, that kind of thing. So it's important to kind of make sure that you're moving the dial and that you're putting this vision into reality. And that's kind of a key, I think. And then, of course, there's a communication choices. There are different ways to communicate with your chapter and the outer world, and there are so many choices right now between social media, between some kind of course manager tools. Email is getting a little bit cumbersome to connect with all your course. But how are you going to communicate your plan? How are you going to take up a little bit of time at your rehearsals to kind of get the ball rolling? How are you going to publicize why your board has decided to do certain things? How are you going to keep the ball rolling and keep it going? This is not a question where going back to the benevolent dictator role where you could just announce it to the world and that was what's going to happen for the next year. It's really helping you get to a place where you're coaching people along, you're encouraging them, you're showing them results, and you're moving the dial in terms of what your chapter truly wants to do and get going with. And so I think it's a really important thing to use a multiple layer of communication and never stop talking about it. If it's a vision about where your chapter truly wants to go, then let's get on it and let's get doing some little projects along the way that really enhance that as you go. Simple thing we decided to do is everyone in heart, or when the We Sing, We Serve came out, we decided to on a monthly basis get 12 from our group and go serve at the food bank. And so we got on the conveyor lines with all the food and the sorting that has to happen at these food banks. And then to enhance that a little bit, we did a benefit Christmas show, and gave all the proceeds to the food bank. So we kind of did a double down. We sang, we served. We'd sing for all the volunteers at the break that we had there, and then also we at our event we devoted a show profit basically to the food bank as well. So it was part of a let's get connected with our community. Let's get real with being willing to supply just manpower, and that became a real. It's become a monthly deal, and guys are looking forward to being part of that food bank line. Even though we only sing a couple of songs at the break, it connects us with our community. It's an important thing, and we think we're helping and other volunteers enjoy our songs. So, what are you doing? Sometimes these little projects you do. Not just one-offs, but on kind of a continuing basis, can really cement who you are in your community and what you mean to it. So that's a big deal about making that vision real. Okay. So I guess my overall comment on that is, don't get caught in the calendar crunch, which is one repeat year after another. Try and make it a different year. And try some things, and you know what? It isn't all going to show up, or it isn't all going to work together all the time. But it's worth maybe a little burst of time and energy and money to see what actually happens. The next thing I want to share with you here was this. I call it's the Venn diagram, and I think you can. If I was any good at some of the technology, I'd probably be able to draw you the 3 intersecting circles. But I really look at what happens in a chapter as these 3 circles. It's either going to be a growth in performance, whatever you determine that to be, or a growth in membership, or a growth in community outreach. And these are actually 3 interlocking circles of a Venn diagram. And so the interesting thing from a presidential view is that chances are you can't do all 3 at once in a given year. Performance, a growth in performance might be getting more coaching, developing a bigger repertoire. It might be deciding to sing in a particular show or in a convention or a contest, and zeroing in on those as being your performance goals for the next year. Unfortunately, what it can do though, with that focus, is you probably take away some of the time and the energy you can put into membership. Which would be another cycle. We always want to be growing in membership. And so what are we doing in terms of planning that? And those could be everything from guest nights to what we've learned. The 2 best recruiting tools that we have in our toolbox right now are the Learn to Sing program, or Sing program, or we adapted it and stole the title of Real Men Sing. We use that as a kind of a multi-night recruitment tool, if you will. And then the Christmas Chorus was another one that was terrific for us. So what are some of your membership recruitment strategies, if you will, and how are they going to impact your world? And then the community outreach is the other one, whether you're reaching out to high schools or youth. In our case, we're putting quite a bit of effort into talking to music educators and being at their conferences and that sort of thing. So the fact of the matter is that while you can be kind of moving in all these directions, sometimes you have to realize there's got to be a little bit of give and take between them. One example that I can give you is that we found in our chapter, membership was kind of dying off a little bit, and we found with some exit interviews of some guys was that our repertoire was so large that guys felt completely intimidated coming into our course because it just didn't feel they could get up to speed on our repertoire. We had something close to, 30 songs or something on our repertoire at that time. And so what we did consciously was that we reduced our repertoire to 10 songs for the next year. And what we found is, and we also, we added in the wrinkle of testing as well, 100% notes and words on those 10 songs. But what it seemed to do was allow people to get in and recognize it wasn't an overwhelming possibility to be a part of us, and to get up to speed in a quality way on 10 songs was not nearly as onerous. And so we kind of took away from our performance side because we couldn't do as big a show as we used to do, but we were able to grow our membership. And so one gave away to the other a little bit for that next year. Probably took us 2 years to kind of get out of that. And now we're starting to build our repertoire up again. But it's recognizing that wherever you put your time and energy and focus is probably going to take away from one of these other things, because you can't necessarily keep them all going at the same pace. And so I find that this Venn diagram of these three areas is really reality, and probably recognizing what some of your hardcore stuff is you can maintain while you're doing something else is a real key to your success. And knowing where you're aiming this year in one of those three areas could really help you align with your vision, support it, and make it happen. And recognize that strategy is not hope. Hope is always a lousy strategy. Gee, let's have a guest night and I hope somebody shows up. Lousy strategy. It's recognizing that strategy has a lot to do with choices and where you really want to do and how you want to, where you really want to go and what you really want to support. And I found in my chapter, we said, look, we're going to really be focusing on membership or community outreach this year. Guys get it, and they can get on board, and they recognize that, yeah, we're going to give away a little bit in this other area so we can do this more. It works. It works. Again, if you've communicated this well and you've showed them how it kind of lines up with what the big goals are and the big purpose of the chapter, it's a much better place to be in. Okay. I'm going to give you another tool, if you don't mind. I find that Venn diagram is a great tool as well. I'm just going to see if I can pull up the right one here. Yeah. Let's see if this works. I hope you can see this. This is a real quick overview, but I found that in chapters, people delegating to one another can be really poorly done. And how many times have you asked somebody to do something and it either didn't get done at all, or maybe it didn't get done the way you thought it was going to get done, and basically you wound up having to pick up the pieces yourself and get it done. By delegating well, you can do a couple of things. First of all, you get the task done by somebody else instead of you taking it all on and burning out. Also, it helps that person sort of grow in terms of what they actually need to support the chapter in a particular role that you need them to do, and in some tasks you're asking them to do. So delegating well can be a great thing. And also, when you're being delegated to, if you're in that particular, if you're wearing a different hat, you can also ask some really good questions about, okay, so what do I actually need to know to make sure that this thing happens? And so what I'm showing you here, I hope, are the 6 steps of delegation. And again, this came out of the Healthy Chapter Initiative from the Society. And following these 6 steps is really a key to your success, because you're not making too many assumptions about what people are going to do for you. You're going to be accurate in terms of what you're actually asking them to do, and you're going to get the job done, which is all important. So the thing here is step 1 is, do you actually know what you're actually asking people to do? What's the duty to be done? What are the results, the importance, that kind of thing? And clearly what I'm suggesting here is you've probably already identified the person, and you know that there's some people you can give a single task to and they'll be terrific at it, but give them something as big as, okay, will you be show chairman? That has multiple tasks and roles to it and oversight and everything else. So you got to match up the person's expertise and their abilities with the delegation you actually want them to do. How many of us have failed because we asked the person who volunteered to do it and then found out they neither had the inclination nor the abilities nor the skills to do it, frankly, and didn't do it on time, and everybody else had to panic to get it done. Stop doing that to yourself. Recognize that there are certain tasks you can ask certain people to do. Other ones, obviously, people that have had the kind of experience you're looking for, you can delegate a bigger thing. But the first thing is to make sure you have it clear in your mind what you're actually asking this person to do. The second thing is what we call the boundary conditions, and that is, what do we actually expect from this person? If you're going to ask this person to kind of oversee your ticket sales, then what are the results you're asking them to do? What are the timing, the non-negotiables? Sometimes non-negotiables are around a budget or a timing that has to happen, or the way you have to talk to people, or the software or the application that you're using in your chapter now, that maybe they have to use that to facilitate whatever it happens to be. What level of authority are you going to give them to actually get things done? Are you going to give them carte blanche, or are you going to make sure they check with you in terms of actions they want to take before they actually do them? So, and what's the time guidelines? The worst thing we can do as delegators is to give people a 6-month project, or a project you think is going to take 6 months to complete, and only checking with them 6 months later and say, well, did you get it done? And they might say, anything. Yes, I did. No, I didn't. Part of it's done. I need help. I mean, my goodness, what a terrible place to put people in, including yourself. So time guidelines along the way is, do they have to check in with you and let you know what they're doing? Are they running into some trouble and need some help with some other people? What's going on? And so putting in good guidelines so you know exactly how things are unfolding, especially with the more complex tasks, is a real key to your success. Also, the third step is, do they actually have the information they need to do stuff? Is there another person they need to get information from? Does the treasurer know something that they don't know? Is there another person who did it last year that ran into some things and wrote down some memos that they need to know? Is there a binder? Okay. Is there a computer file somewhere that you can access to make sure that this job gets done well based on mistakes from the previous year? How are we making sure that this is really going to work for us? So, do they have the right knowledge and information in front of them to get the job done? The next one is skills. Maybe they haven't prepared a budget before and they don't know the format for your chapter. They're not sure exactly what you're asking them for. Do you have to give them additional training? And maybe it's the treasurer gives them the training, or the secretary tells them about what the compliance issues are, or something like that. Is there some other skills or requirements they need to actually get the job done? Do they know how to talk to the printer if they're going to be doing posters, and how printers talk about the different file names of the stuff they need? What are some of the additional skills that they will need to get this job done? Making an assumption they're going to go out and get it probably isn't going to help you very much. What resources do they need is the fifth one. It talks about, so what's the budget? What's the applications you're using? What are the tools you're going to give them to actually help get the job done? And if we haven't covered that off earlier, then we want to make sure that they've got everything they've got. And if they have any questions about this, ran into a guy last week. Gee, Rob, I don't have an email account. That could be an issue. So maybe the task is wrong for this person. Maybe we need some other skills to help get them up to speed. What is going to get in the way of them being successful in terms of that thing? And then also the last one is support, and that is, how are you going to support them through the process? How are you going to give them feedback in terms of how they're doing? How are you going to encourage them? All those good things that help them get to a better place. This is a real key to making sure people are going to be encouraged along the way to get things done. I would submit to you, if you have delegated and have not included these 6 things, these are practically contracts of delegation, that you're a lousy delegator, and it's time to pick up your socks, because they're really not knowing what you're asking for. Now, if you delegate to somebody who's a veteran and has done it before, they can probably tell you exactly all these 6 points. Great discussion. If it's somebody that's kind of new to the task, probably you're going to shrink the role down so that they're not trying to do everything, because how many times have we thrown guys into the deep end of the pool and didn't get the result we were looking for? I can remember early in my barbershop career, about 2 years in, they asked me to be show chairman. And as a young guy, I had not a hot clue of all the moving parts that are required for a show chairman. The old guys had to bill me out big time to help me get to where I needed to get to. But what a terrible place to put somebody in. And so delegating well aligns with some of the tasks and goals you want to get done in your chapter, some of the things you want to move as you go forward. And so you have to be good at this delegation. And also this helps people understand what you're doing for them as well, in terms of some of the issues that you are handling in your presidential role. So I would submit to you that delegation is a real key to your success. and delegating well is what this role is truly about, is making sure that all the tasks and all the things that you're trying to get done in the next year with multiple people is a real key. You cannot just do it all yourself. There are too many of us who have burned out and lack the energy now to even move the dial in our chapters because we took on too much and we didn't share the load. And it is your obligation, I would submit, as a president of your chapter to be a good delegate. Okay. How am I doing in terms of timing, Scott?
We are right at about 10:45, 10:46, so we're in good shape. Was there anything other formally that you wanted to cover? If not, I've got a few questions for you.
The only other thing I had on the bottom of my agenda there are some great resources out there on the barbershop websites, and I would truly encourage you to take a look at things like that: A Business Approach to Barbershop, the Chapter Administrative Leadership Team, Chapter Sample Budget, the Chapter President Training Module. There are many things online and also in document form that can really help your chapter if you need some of those additional resources.
Rob, I saw those on the bottom of your agenda there, and so while you were speaking, I looked up the links to all those, and I will be emailing those out to all the participants as soon as we finish with the class.
Oh, super.
I'll also send out a link just to the general document center in and of itself so that they can self-serve and find some other documents that they may not have been known that were there. So I will get that all sent out at the top of the hour when we're done, guys. You'll look for that in your email. Couple questions real quick, Rob. You touched on SMART goals, specifically the acronym of SMART. Could you take a minute and expound on the importance of that?
Yeah, I apologize for going over that pretty quickly. Let me see if I can share screen again. Here we go.
There's one of the
programs that were created
Guys, did we lose Rob? It looks like we've lost Rob, but it looks like we've got a few other guys still on the line here. I'm going to unmute everyone. I don't know whether Rob lost. He was having a little trouble with his audio earlier, so it's possible that we lost Rob. I've unmuted everyone. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, very good. You're all still with me. I'm going to mute everyone again here. And I'm going to try to answer a couple of questions, and then we can see if we can get Rob back. When he does, we'll go into SMART goals again.
Am I back in with you now?
You are now. You are back in. Great, Rob. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, it went away on me. Okay, where was I at answering the question? Was I
just
getting
start
somewhere?
pull up your doc there to talk about SMART goals.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. The document that basically reads about being, in terms of SMART goals, which is the acronym, it was being specific in terms of your goal and how you want to actually set it. Growing membership this year is not a specific goal. Be more specific about the numbers and the dates and that kind of thing is the S of SMART goals. Being measurable, is it something you can actually measure? And that's basically, are we going to measure numbers? Are we measuring results? Are we measuring outcomes? What are we actually doing? It's also got to be attainable or achievable. Realistically, can a 10-person chapter expect to double their size in a year? Maybe not, but maybe they can do it by 2 or 3 people in the next 6 months and then grow from there. So there has to be a bit of a gut check in terms of what that's all about. And is it realistic? Is it something that we can actually achieve? Is it something that we will put the energy from one part of our Venn diagram into something else? And then also, is it time bound? Is there some way of kind of putting a deadline on it, or something that's tangible? Maybe doesn't have to have a time deadline to it, but it certainly has to be tangible. And those are the ways of basically making sure that your goals can get set up well to be followed through on.
Cool. Thanks for going over that a little bit in a little bit more detail, Rob. That's useful information. I had a question from Pete, where he was asking. You were talking a little bit about marketing, and then your audio cut out a little bit. But in the Houston chapter, he's saying they're having an issue of not having a marketing person on their board, and it's impacting them. When you in your chapter, have you brought a marketer on board, and how did you find that person?
Actually, in our chapter, that's a constant need. And what we're finding is no, we haven't got the marketing guy or one that wants to devote the time to our chapter that we really need to kind of market. But what we are finding is that we're growing in social media presence. Amy Rose in Nashville has been a terrific resource to help figure out how to put your Facebook pages up there and some of your other social media stuff. And so we're finding that we're growing a lot smarter in some of those areas where you can have the same message over multiple social media platforms. And marketing seems to, done well, can kind of be supported by those social media platforms. Do we have the magic guy yet? I'm afraid not. Are we getting better at it? Yeah, incrementally. And probably Scott has a lot better answers than I do for that one.
It's one of those things that you kind of have to look and see what it is from a marketing perspective you're looking for. You're looking for traditional marketing, or you're looking for online marketing. And then it's just sometimes a matter of just finding somebody who's willing to take on those responsibilities. May not necessarily need to be somebody who is, from a social media perspective, somebody who is really well versed in the ins and outs of Facebook or Twitter or what have you, but somebody who's willing to take the time and actually do it. It's just like writing a blog. It has to take the time to actually do it. And oftentimes that can be half the hurdle. There are resources out there, and we can help you find resources on the technological aspects of how to use those platforms. But finding someone to actually take the time to want to learn how to do it and then actually keep up with it is oftentimes the bigger challenge. So if you guys have questions along those lines, feel free to reach out. We can always help you get some resources or find some direction there. Rob, another question for you that came in. Did your chapter have any unintended consequences from implementing testing of the 100% on notes and words? And secondarily, did any guys leave as a result of the testing?
You can imagine the amount of discussion that was required when we implemented that. And I will tell you this, one of the interesting things is, one of our discussion points was, we are a singing organization, and we have all got together to sing. And if our true goal is to sing well for our public, doesn't it behoove each one of us to actually know what we're singing? And so that became kind of the core thing. And the other thing that I learned from that notes and word testing was the confidence that you have on the risers when your section or when your chapter mates actually know the notes and words. The confidence level and the performance level that is possible goes up. So, did it take a lot of discussion to get some of the crustier individuals up to speed? Yeah. Did we lose anybody? We actually lost one guy. Our chapter was about 25 guys at the time. We lost one guy who had been rhubarbing his way through songs for as long as I had known him. And as much as I loved him, he wasn't helping us. And then we lost another guy who actually, he was an older guy, he was in his 80s, and he says, I don't want to have to do this. And then he went home and he started looking at his notes and words, and he came back and he said, I can do this. This is not an onerous demand. So the one thing that I really learned from it was, yeah, it's going to take some discussion. Yes, there could be some fringe players that decide for some reason that they don't want to be part of a singing organization which really wants to ask you to learn the notes and words, which you got to think is a little bit of a in it for me only and not for the ensemble. And also the thing that I learned is, boy, the confidence you have when you know everybody around you has got their notes and words nailed and you can hear it. My goodness, that's a plus, and it's well worth pursuing.
Yeah, nothing sounds better than singing the right notes and words, right?
And it's only step one of our performance, really, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Gentlemen, we've got about 5 minutes left. That is all the questions that I have received via text. If any of you have any questions, you can feel free to either send me a text real quick here. I can go through, and if I can do it here, I might be able to unmute everyone. And we'll just open the floor for the next 4 minutes or so. You should all be unmuted at this point. Any questions any of you might like to ask?
Yeah, Scott, this is Jim Foster, San Antonio.
Hi, Jim.
Yeah, I got cut out because of the capabilities of my some point. And I was wondering if I could see the Venn diagram. I missed that.
We don't have, Rob did not have the Venn diagram visually, but I think it's something that we probably have to put together.
Okay, yeah, if we maybe get an email of that.
Okay. We're getting an echo here, guys. I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone. And I do have a question that just came in here. So. And then, Rob, you can unmute yourself here to answer this. But a question just came in that says, is there anything that leadership typically overlooks or undershoots? And Rob, you're muted real quick here. So if you want to unmute, maybe you can chime in on that.
There we go. Okay, I'm back. I guess it's a bit of a repetition of what I said earlier, but sometimes we get so connected to the calendar and what we've done last year that we think that operating our chapter is doing that again, and it undershoots. And I think our guys, because their lives have truly been changed with barbershop, I think they want to impact a bigger world. And so getting a bigger impact and a bigger vision is where I think our leadership demands us to go. What's next? What's the next best thing? How can we do this better? Rather than get kind of calendar locked.
Okay, Rob, another question just came in real quickly. How did your chapter implement the notes and words test, and going back to that topic?
Yeah, that's always a tough one. It was a discussion. We actually talked about membership. We talked about performance. We talked about our desire to get more members, but we wanted to get members on that were willing to be part of who we were. And so it was a discussion up front about, okay, here's what we're going to start doing. We have lots of tools and learning tracks for people to get onto. So we made sure that all they had that. We empowered our section leaders to help folks. We gave lots of different ways for people to test. You know, some people sang into a microphone, some people sang in front of the chorus, some people sang in quartets. So we gave a variety of ways of sort of singing your stuff. And we adapted that as it went to make sure that we could include as many people as possible. And we set deadlines. We set expectations about how soon people would be off the page so that we could move on to the rest of the performance. So it was a big discussion, and it was a lot of effort, and it still is. I guess I'll tell you that it's worth the pain. We actually just did a member survey again, and the one thing that came back is people still want to improve as a chorus, and they still understand the reasons for needing people to test on these songs, even though it's only the first barrier to actually performing a song. And so that's the real key.
Very good. Guys, we are right up against the top of the hour, so I think we're going to cut it off here. First of all, I'd like to really extend a debt of gratitude and thanks to Rob for taking time out of his day. This has been really, really helpful. The feedback that I've gotten, Rob, has been great. I want to touch base with you after the fact. I'll shoot you an email. I'd like to see if we could get a couple of those documents that have been requested by some of the attendees this morning. So we'll get that sent out. Fellas, I will also send out the links to the resources that Rob mentioned within the presentation. And if any of you have a question after the fact, you all received the invite via email. Please feel free to reply to that if there's something we didn't cover here that you have a question about. We'll be happy to try to answer that as best as possible. Also, be watching your email within the next, probably it'll take me about 48 hours or so, but I do expect that the recording of this conference, I will be able to get that up on YouTube, and I will send a link out to everyone so that you can go back and review this. And if there's anybody in your chapter who was not able to attend and would like to, you think this might be helpful to them, please feel free to share the link. So, gentlemen, thank you for joining. It's been a great time, and look forward to talking to you all soon. Thanks again, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.